I'm Simon Taylor, CEO and founder of HYCU, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time today with us. As people will tell you, I'm usually a very passionate person who's very loud, a little bit American in the way that I present. I will tell you, I just got off a 3 a.m. flight, but I'm going to try to keep the energy up and make sure that we have a great session today. I'm here along with Tobias Sundaram, who leads our product efforts, as well as Goran Gorevsky, our CTO. And we're going to walk through what HYCU is, the origin story, the backstory of HYCU, and why there's never been a more important time for a company like HYCU to exist. So, if we jump to the first slide, again, HYCU does stand for Hybrid Cloud Uptime, and we're actually the world's fastest growing multi-cloud backup as a service company. And, I always say backup is a little bit of a misnomer because, as we all know, it's really the recovery that matters, and from our perspective, that's exactly what HYCU set out to build. We are headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. Data protection is in our DNA. As a business, the management team and the executive team at HYCU, this is actually our third company that we built together, believe it or not. But it's also the most exciting. In the last year, we've grown about 300%. We grew about 430% in 2020. The company now has 3,000 customers in 78 countries around the world. It says over 2,700 customers, but the recent count is actually 3,000 customers. And in April of this year, we did our first ever venture funding with Bain Capital and Acrew, which was an $87.5 million A round. And there's a very important reason for why so much money was pumped into the business at that particular time. In a word, it's ransomware. When we think about all of the cyber attacks that have gone on in the world in the last 2 years, we look at the numbers and we say every 11 seconds, there's another attack. One of the major problems that I think we saw and almost anticipated 3 years ago when we founded the business was that the sprawl that we were seeing in terms of data silos was continuing to accelerate. So data silo sprawl, we see as one of the biggest problems in the industry today, meaning that when data protection was first created, we were looking at homogeneous environments with physical servers, whether they were Windows or Linux. You had, Veritas, it was really good at Unix. You had Commvault, really good at Windows. Veeam comes along and they're fantastic at virtualized environments. But today we're not looking at 1, 2, or 3 data silos, are we? Today the average company has 130 different data silos across its entire data estate. And those are comprised of physical servers, virtual machines, containers, you've got SaaS services. Data is literally everywhere. It's growing exponentially year over year, and there's never been a meaningful way to monitor, manage, and protect that data so that any company anywhere could truly be safe. And that's what HYCU set out to do. We set out with a true multi-cloud focus to make sure that we could provide what we call equivalency in data protection, meaning that no matter where your data resides, HYCU Protege, our multi-cloud backup and recovery as a service platform, will be able to help you to protect that data, migrate that data to the location of choice, and also set up disaster recovery as a service. So what we'll do in today's presentation is we'll take you through the various different elements of what we call the cloud journey. We'll look at how HYCU has evolved as a company and how we are helping to support and protect our over 3,000 customers around the world. So next slide. So, when we think about, again, this data silo sprawl problem, it all comes back to managing business critical data. I think at the end of the day, there is a journey that every company is on. And that's a journey, whether it's to the cloud or back again. Again, the reason we're called Hybrid Cloud Uptime or HYCU is really twofold. The first is that this is exactly the kind of pathway that we are supporting as a company. We believe that every company in the future will be hybrid cloud, and making sure that you've got end-to-end data protection to support that is critical. The second reason is a little bit more fun. It's simply that when you think about a haiku poem, all of the data in a language that's condensed down into a very small, elegant, and manageable package. And again, that's exactly what HYCU is there to do, is to take all of that data and sort of condense it down and make it more manageable for our customers. So when we think about where business critical data sits today, It's everywhere. It's in SQL, Oracle. It's in every kind of mission critical legacy application and database. It's in a variety of SaaS services. And we really set out with an intent to make sure we could protect all of it, no matter where your data is, no matter where it resides, with true or granular recovery, data migration, and disaster recovery as a service. And we're going to help those customers to manage that data, whether it's on-prem, as you're journeying to the cloud with what you'll see in today's presentation, our automated data migration capabilities, and then on the cloud as well. Sabaya? So, people often stop me at this point in the presentation and they say, okay, I think I understand. So we added this slide to sort of make it really, really clear to everybody. We provide application and database aware data protection, data mobility, and disaster recovery as a service that helps you throughout your journey to the cloud and back again. Again, on-prem as you journey, and in the cloud as well. And again, I keep mentioning this because I think what's important to understand is that the old days of homogeneous backup and recovery, where you buy a big appliance, it sits in your basement, you deploy agents, and you look to sort of add agents with every new sort of area of your environment that you create, those days are over. Everything that we've built is natively integrated into the platforms that we support. Everything you'll see today is completely agentless. So in our new paradigm, what we believe is that simplifying and consumerizing data protection is the only way to keep the bad actors out. Because so often it is things like misconfiguration or misunderstanding that actually open up the attack surface for bad actors and allow folks a way into your environment. By simplifying and providing no barrier between the public cloud or the platform and HYCU, we remove all of that risk and make it much easier and much simpler to manage your data. So to use a real life example, we have customers who have migrated entire SAP HANA instances from on-prem to the public cloud, and then set up disaster recovery as a service back to on-prem again, all with 5 clicks in 7 minutes. So, when you talk about speed, you talk about efficiency, you talk about ease of use, but you talk about truly hybrid cloud. And what I'm going to show you in just a moment is how we actually do that. All right, so I'll just quickly go through this, and Sabaya, I'll pass it over to you so we can go much more in depth. But here is sort of a visualization of what we call HYCU Protege. And the way I like to describe this is almost the keys on a piano. What most companies do is they set out to build one big platform, and then they deploy agents to all the various different public clouds and all the different on-prem environments, and they hope that that's going to work for customers. We took an entirely different tact. What we said is, we're going to create almost an inverted platform where we're going to start with very, very robust, purpose-built backup and recovery services that are natively integrated into every cloud. We built a purpose-built backup and recovery service for Nutanix, natively integrated at the storage snapshot level, VMware through their VADP integration. We built a purpose-built backup as a service in the Google Cloud Marketplace, in the Azure Marketplace, in the AWS Marketplace, and then we offered Office 365 as well. And to top it all off, one of the major things that we understood as a company is that when we think about the future of modernizing applications and databases, we don't believe fundamentally at HYCU that applications or databases will ever again be just a container or just a virtual machine. We see the future of applications and databases as a mixed stack that will include physical servers, containers, and virtual machines. And so what we've done is inside of HYCU Protege, we've actually added native containerization support. And that native Kubernetes support natively integrates into all these different platforms so that it's seamless, it's easy to use, and it feels like a core part of the architecture. Nothing here is a bolt-on, everything is natively integrated. And again, when we think about what we can do with all this data, it's backup and recovery as a service, it's automated data migration, and it's disaster recovery as a service as well. So with that, Sabaya, I'll pass it over to you, and let's show these folks how deep we can go with our products and services.
Absolutely, Simon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of you. Again, my name is Sabaya. As Simon said, Sabaya Sundaram. I run products for HYCU, and thanks to Simon for setting it up. Any questions for Simon? Simon is here all through. I just want to make sure if you have any questions, let's start off. happy to start the conversation and then go through it. Would love to make it interactive. Any questions?
And also feel free to use the chat as well. Some folks don't like to shout out. We're more than welcome to read directly from the chat window.
Thank you. Good. Okay. So I'll quickly continue on what Simon was actually telling. The thing is that, as Simon said in the prior thing, for every one of the clouds, we have built it purpose-built for the cloud, right? Now the question comes down to saying, how does it come to a customer, right? When a customer looks at it, they want one unified console. So we do actually provide them that one unified console. So they have one unified console, and they are able to manage the best-in-class solution for each one of the clouds from a single pane of glass. That is something they can actually do. We talk about three things which at a macro level, I'll go through in specifics too. It's around, at the end of the day, the first thing, most important thing for customers is around applications. And we provide you application-aware data management, for backup and recovery, migration, disaster recovery. That's something we do. The second thing, the key thing here is that everything we deliver is delivered as a service. Because to Simon's point earlier, we want to make it simple for customers. Traditional data protection was all built before pre-cloud days. If you look at majority of the data protection in the market today, we're all started before the cloud became cloud. And the cloud has taught us the importance of as a service. And that is something we are lucky to have started in that philosophy right from the get-go and made it as a service in the entire journey. That is something we are doing, right? So going into the specifics around the 3Ds is that the first one is data protection or data assurance, how people call it, right? It's the backup and recovery across the on-prem infrastructure, the public cloud infrastructure. It doesn't have AWS, I'll talk to you. But the point is that it's around on-prem infrastructure and the public cloud infrastructure. The key thing is that it's for every platform. It has been purpose-built. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we wanted to make sure it is native to the platform. People say, what does native really mean? Native here means it integrates into the platform, meaning it uses all the APIs of the platform and it's tightly integrated. It leverages the functionality in the platform like snapshots, clones, replicas, the identity management, and so on. So it tightly integrates with that. That's there. The second thing is that for the customer, it uses the same terminology, makes it look and feel like the platform. Those are things we try to make sure, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure when customer is on a particular cloud, whichever cloud they choose, either on-prem or a public cloud, they have to feel it is a service of the platform. That's the model we want to think of. The thing is that everything we do is application aware, and that's something we have a patent on. And it's a unique thing which we do. We'll try to even try to see if you have time, we will try to do a demo for you. And everything we do, again, is agentless. People say, really? Even all the applications? Yes, the answer is yes. It is truly agentless across the board. That is something we do. And one other thing I tell people is that because we were lucky in the sense when we started developing, our Goran's team, right from the get-go, knew that we have to sell into large service providers and managed service providers. Because at the end of the day, right now, the world is going into the point where everything is becoming a service and people want to have fully managed offerings. And that's one of the reasons right from the get-go, all of our solution has been built multi-tenant ready and built in with self-service. So it gets the best of both worlds. People think, so what's special? Every platform has it. A lot of people have it, but it was actually a bolt-on. What I meant is they built the original platform for a single customer, and they said, oh, now I got to add multi-tenancy, and they added it. That becomes a lot more like a Frankenstein monster, whereas here it becomes a natural part of the offering. That's the current data protection. The other things which we had was, as we started talking to a lot of our customers, we originally started with just the data protection. That was our core bread and butter. Then as we started talking to customers, one of the things they said, we have a lot of journey to the cloud. Can you actually help us? That was our journey into the migration aspect of it. that we made it because they said they loved the simplicity we bought for data protection. They said, why can't we have the same level of simplicity for data migration onto the cloud? As all of you know, 95% of the customers are either already on the cloud or in the process to migrating to cloud. And they needed a simplicity because every cloud vendor actually has a migration tool. And people say, so why are you building one more? It's not that we wanted to build one more. The whole thing is customers drove us. They said, guys, there are lots of tools. The problem is a lot of the tools are so complicated. It takes a huge set of manpower to get the migration going. As Simon was saying, they wanted the one-click migration. I will demonstrate to you why we say one-click or one selection migration. I'll show you how we make it simple. That's the migration part. Once we started doing from on-prem onto the public cloud, the natural thing is that the same people said, why can't I come back? So can you go back, go to the cloud and come back, right? It's the entire cross-cloud migration back and forth and the disaster recovery capability. Especially a lot of on-prem customers today, they have DR, but what they have DR for is about 10% of their infrastructure. Rest of the 90% don't have it. And that's where they wanted the main reason they don't have it, it's not that they don't need it, it's just that it's too expensive today. The way we decided to build our disaster recovery is that we wanted to make it extremely cost efficient. I'll talk a lot more about it too as I go forward. That's something we actually provide for customers. Any questions? Feel free to stop me anytime. I tend to talk fast and so if there is anything, please do let me know.
Yeah, because, sorry to jump in. Can I ask, and maybe this is a question also for Don, is this the first time most of you have spoken to HYCU? Christophe, for you, for example, I can see you nodding.
Yeah, I know that they exist, but I today didn't speak directly to them. And for me, it would be interesting to get some more technical details. Where is the HYCU management software running? Can I run it in my own data center without any service contract, but with my own IT staff? So that could be interesting questions from my side here.
Fred, just quickly, we've had the opportunity to speak to a couple folks here, Harbin and Ulrika in particular, but I know there's a lot of new names and faces for us, so super excited about this. And Christoph, thanks for that question, because we can get as technical as you'd like. I know we want to go through some of the sort of highlight first, and then we can drill down into however much detail you need us to get into.
Perfect. Thank you.
Please do send in your questions because especially if it's your first time talking to these guys, you have all the brains, well, most of the brains behind the company here. So please do make the most of it.
Thank you, Fred. So, Christoph, I'll just do a quick answer to your question about saying, can you run the service in your on-prem infrastructure? Answer is absolutely yes. We do provide you if you are predominantly an on-prem infrastructure and you want to run on-prem, yes, you can do it. Even in that, we make it extremely simple. I'll demonstrate. I'll try to get through in much more detail as we go to.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So we talked to, I'll just, one other thing I'll tell you, I do tell people the 1, 2, 3, 4, this is something this is one of our, when we started building it, this was one of our philosophical discussions saying, how simple do we want to make it? We said it, when I first showed it, people said, oh, it's all a bunch of marketing. I said, no, I want to make sure we go and said, we will make it a reality. And that's something we have actually made it a reality. It's truly a one-click backup. Recovery is intuitive. And we say 2 minutes is actually less than that. Deployment, there are two kinds of deployment we provide for customers. If it's an on-prem infrastructure, yes, we do provide you complete virtualized appliances. It takes less than 3 minutes to actually get it deployed truly. And I can give you enough structure around it. And from a learning perspective, because we are built tightly with each of the platforms, customers, I'll tell you, without any training, have been able to completely adopt it and start using the solution. That's something there. When we talk about a lot of this simplicity, one of the challenges which we ran into was some people said, oh, it's simple, so it doesn't have much functionality. As you know, that's a problem, right? It's like saying your iPhone is simple, so it doesn't have much functionality. It's like No, that's not the case, right? Same thing here. The solution is simple. It doesn't mean we made it dumbed it down. We try to add a lot of the common things into intelligence in the platform. Like one of our people, one of our partners, as we were showing them one time, I remember when Simon was talking, he said like, oh, so is it AI built in? I said, the answer is yes, the intelligence is built in. You can call it AI or whatever, but the question is that it's intelligence built into the platform. That's how we made it simple. And the last thing, it's all around application. That is something which we talk about as what's special about us. I know many of you are interested in how we do it, right? Before going to the specifics, I want to give you a little bit on our architecture. I was debating, should I do it or not, but I'll walk through. Hopefully gives you a flavor of, because one of the things Simon said is like early on is that what we built is an inverted platform. Traditionally, the way people build is they build a huge platform, right? Be it an appliance or a big architectural platform, they build tightly thing there. And then they say, oh, which are the sources do I need to support? And which are the targets do I need to support? That's the way traditional data protection was built. Whereas we went a little counter to that particular one. When we started, for example, this is the approach we actually took. We built it for Nutanix. We built it for VMware. We built it for GCP, Azure, and AWS. I can add on, right? And then we took all of that information and tried to make it, essentially, these are individual services. Completely, they can do standalone, and they are the best for each of the platform. But obviously, to do the cross-cloud migration and DR, you got to talk to each other, right? These are individual services, but they can talk to each other. When sometimes people look at it, they say, oh, is it like the microservice architecture? The way I would say it's a service-based architecture. Everything is a service. They all run independently, but they can talk to each other with the right credentials. That's the level of simplicity we brought in. This is one of the reasons we are elastically scalable. We can actually grow as the customer needs. And that's some part of our fundamental difference than many other platforms. And people talk about API first. I mean, I guess for us, we are lucky, as I said earlier, again, because we started later in the game compared to many other guys, we built it natively. Everything we do is an API. And the thing it is not just about us telling it, it's right in the product. The customer doesn't even have to call us. It's right in the product. They can look at it. They can start consuming it right from. This is one of the reasons a lot of the service providers, a real example, a service provider who looked at our solution, loved it. Within 30 days, he had a backup as a service for all of his customers. They're able to do things like that because it's built for, one is multi-tenant, the other one is built with the API first.
And Sabai, just a quick question from Christoph there.
Sure.
We did actually just launch AWS support at AWS reInvent 2 weeks ago. So it's in early preview stage, with a series of customers. With the general release and general availability coming up in January or late January.
Yeah, thank you.
And absolutely, I will actually also show we'll talk about the AWS too in the later half of this session. Absolutely, what we're doing there. So some of the key highlights, so before going into the specific, there are like 4 key areas I want to actually touch, which one is around Kubernetes. Like that's something there, as Simon said, a lot of customers are Kubernetes and containers are top of mind for many customers. That's number one. The second thing is around SaaS services are top. Again, one of the things growing, it's one of the fastest growing areas. And on that regard, we will talk about our solution for O365. The third thing is around AWS. As Simon said, we as a company have evolved, started with the on-prem infrastructure, then we went into GCP and Azure, and now AWS. I'll talk about the AWS. And the last thing I'll talk about, the fourth area, which I want to cover, I should say, is around ransomware. And what are some of the things we are doing around a thing called RScore? It's a public service. I'll talk about it. So those are the 4 areas I'm going to cover. So I think there's some question there. I want to make sure. Yeah, okay. We will actually clarify it. So I'll first start with Kubernetes first. Yeah. Always feel free to stop me with any questions. When we talk about Kubernetes, right? And a big thing which we saw from our customers is that when people start adopting public cloud, majority of the customers, they want to go to cloud quickly. So what they do is that take the majority of their workloads and do a lift and shift. They take their existing infrastructure and migrate as is. But what we see a lot of partners do is take some amount of application and try to modernize it. When they talk about modernizing, they talk about microservices, containerization, and so on, right? That's the most common thing you see there. And one of the things, which is a stat some of you probably know, is around there's a stat which says that 85% of the organization will be running containerized applications before 2025. And we are seeing that a lot more. Early on, when we saw container applications, the predominant thing we saw was a lot of testing, development going on. Early, starting 2021, we started seeing a lot of customers going production in containers. And that's one of the reasons we actually forced us to saying, okay, now that customers are starting to go production, customers started saying, guys, I would like to protect it because it's, again, business critical infrastructure, start doing it. That's what led us into doing this thing. And people talk about why containers, although this is, again, an obvious thing to many of you. There are two predominant reasons which drove people to do that. It's around the operational simplicity and speed, right? Containers, the good thing about containers and Kubernetes specifically, I would say, is that it allows you to scale faster, bring up new applications faster, allow you to test and develop things faster. That's around. And it's also simple. It makes that level of scale managing extremely simple. That's the operational simplicity. And this is, you can see around the public service, that's public cloud. That's one of the reasons, as we started doing much of the public clouds, our focus on Kubernetes and containers actually increased. I'll talk a lot more about it too as we go through. The second thing which I wanted to actually talk about is that when people think in terms of modern application, what many vendors would like you to think is that, oh, modern applications means it's only Kubernetes and containers, that's all. As you well know, it's extremely hard for customers to be just purely containers. If you look at truly in an enterprise today, when you think of a modern application, it is not just the Kubernetes, it's not just the data running in Kubernetes. In addition to that, they have some infrastructure in a virtual machine and some in object storage. That all of them together makes a single application for customer. Why am I saying this? The main reason is that when we had a choice, as we were developing, we had two choices. We can actually decide to build just Kubernetes alone, or we can build containers into container management and Kubernetes into our broader portfolio where we manage applications and databases and virtual machines and storage. So we decided to go the second route, meaning when we think in terms of container management, we said it has to include the containers, the virtual machines, applications, databases, and storage, all of them together, because that's what a true modern application is. That's what we have done, and you will see it as we go through it. So people ask us, so what's special about it? It's a long list of stuff, but I'll tell you what's different about us compared to many other people. When you think in terms of Kubernetes, obviously it's all containers, right? A lot of containers which come and go. When people think, if you truly look at it, what does a customer really care? They don't really care about the containers. Containers are just holders, right? What they really care is the applications. The good thing is that when you deploy HYCU, or turn on the subscription, I should say, turn on the subscription for HYCU, it automatically discovers all your Kubernetes instances. And within that, it'll discover what applications you care. That's why when you look at HYCU, you will not see a container, you will only see the application, because that's what at the end of the day customers care. So that's, again, we have a patent and we actually do that particular one. That's something there. The second thing, at the container level, when you do containers, the scale at which you end up doing, as you know, one of the beauty of containers, it's the speed at which you can spin up and spin down. When you can spin up and spin down, you cannot go and wait for like, oh, let me wait, oh, new containers there, let me go back it up. That model doesn't work. You have to have a set and forget model. Otherwise, if you don't have a set and forget model of policy-based orchestration, there is no way you're going to protect everything. We have actually done that. So it's a truly, you can set it once, forget about it. As new things come and go, it'll automatically take care. That is something which we have done. The only time you have to come to HYCU again after configuration is when you have to recover something, or when you want to clone something. That's when you end up doing. The thing is around the other thing for customers, as you guys are well aware, within a single container infrastructure, there are lots of different applications, and every application has different SLA you can actually have, and that is something we can actually support. These are easy to say. Very few backup solutions actually can provide something like this today. That is something to note. That's all around backup. Recovery, as Simon said, recovery is the most important thing. And a key thing which we did for customers, again, you don't have to worry about the containers. What you care about is application. You can recover the entire application, the namespace, just the data, persistent data alone, or the configuration files. We had at every level of granularity, we can actually provide you that. That is something we do. And it is not just recovering the individual stuff. It's actually, you can recover to where do you want to recover to? You can recover to the same cluster, to a different cluster. That, again, especially in a public cloud, when you want to do between regions and things like that, that is something we have been able to do for customers. Any questions on containers or Kubernetes as such, I should say? I hope I'm making sense.
And yes, I mean, please do jump in and ask, because if anything is unclear, this is your opportunity to ask for a clarification. So if anything, absolutely anything doesn't make sense, please let us know.
Thank you.
And folks, maybe I would just say that I think this is the core difference, the sort of the HYCU difference, as it were, when it comes to container support. You know, we see a lot of kind of bolt-ons and acquisitions in the space that support independent containerized backup and recovery. But when the way that we think about the modernization of applications and databases, it called for a much more integrated methodology. And I think what Sabaya is outlining here is exactly that. It's the idea that the applications and databases themselves, no matter what they're running on, no matter what they're comprised of in the tech stack, HYCU is going to be able to support it because of the way we've natively integrated Kubernetes support into our platform, HYCU Protege.
Thank you, Simon. Cool. So one of the beauties of, because we have actually integrated into our core platform, as Simon was saying, a lot of the benefits of the core platform, like the native identity management, self-service, multi-tenancy, all of that functionality is inherently there for customers. They don't have to worry about any of this stuff, because if you were to buy independent solutions, you got to actually manage them independently. So that problem is not there. Again, quick thing there, like the key part with the containers is that you want to make sure that there's no application left behind. That's the first thing I would tell you. The second thing is that being able to recover. So the other thing I'll tell you, there are customers of ours who actually have, for example, one of our customers actually has 4,000 node Kubernetes deployment. At that scale, when they come and go, you got to have an elastically scalable solution. And that is something, one of the beauties of HYCU. It's truly an elastic scale. There's no sizing in HYCU when you actually deploy at scale. So we talked about the containers. I want to quickly go through two more, and then I want to show you a real life demo, because I'm sure you guys are probably bored with all the presentation. I want to show you a real thing. So quickly on the O365, the key thing is that when we talk about O365, again, there are lots of solutions in the market today. So people say, what's special about you? The first thing I start with this, and then people say, what do you mean? Why are you showing? We know exactly what the O365 is. I'm sure all of you guys are very aware. When you talk about O365, it's made up of lots of different services, right? It's around the email, Exchange, SharePoint, OneNote, everything. The problem is that a lot of the solutions, when they started, they didn't support all of them. The good thing about HYCU is that we try to provide you full comprehensive coverage across all of your all of the infrastructure within O365. That's one of the core differentiators for us. You guys know this, why we need to back up some of the customers. I always ask the question, and we always tell them simple thing. Please read the Microsoft contract that tells you got to protect yourself. Simple thing, but it's there. Oh, sorry. There are 5 key things I want to actually go to our AWS thing. So quickly, I'll quickly go through O365 and talk about the other ones. A big part with O365 is that For customers, it's a service. They're running. They bought a service, right? The reason, as all of you guys know, they started with Exchange. Exchange used to be the dominant thing in on-prem infrastructure, and backup guys used to love that. But right now, all of the Exchange is moving to public cloud. And where is it moving to? O365. When you go from on-prem to public cloud, the reason customers are going there because they want a service, they want it 24/7, up and running, and so on. When you do that, some of the vendors tell customers saying, yeah, you got to back up your cloud service on-prem. It sounds a little strange, right? Why would you take a service, back it up on-prem? It's exactly counter to the reason you're going to the public cloud. That's one of the reasons we wanted to make sure to customers to truly be automated backup as a service rather than to have to manage yourself. So it's truly there. Second thing, as I said, it's the comprehensive nature, cover the entire gamut of what your data you're managing in O365, especially with customers. What we see is that they originally start with just the SharePoint or just the Exchange, and then add OneDrive, then add Teams, and keep going on and on. So the question is, you want to make sure you have comprehensive coverage. Recovery options, the key thing is that you have lots of users, because there are some customers like 35,000 mailboxes. When you have that many people, 35,000 users, when you have that many users, there are a variety of usages, and you want to make sure recovery options, all the different options are there. The last two things which are critical is that anytime when you start doing customer data or end user data, you have to worry about the compliance aspect of it. You got to make sure you have the legal searchability, e-discovery aspect of it. You got to make sure how long you can keep the data for, and searchability are some of the core things customers care. A big difference between HYCU and many other solutions is that in many other solutions, they just focus on backup and recovery. We decided to not just do backup and recovery, but also include e-discovery as part of our solution, especially because pretty much all our customers going through, what we realize is that they have to have some sort of a e-discovery option. And that's, we said, let's build it into that. That's one of the core differentiators between us and other people. Yeah. Okay. The first thing is as a service. You guys know the obvious benefits here. It is completely managed by us. All the customer has to do is turn on the service, put your login credentials, set it up, say, back it up, and that's it. And HYCU automatically can discover all of your users, start backing up from day one. No extra effort involved. Obviously, the customer has the choice of saying, I don't want to back up every user in my organization. I want to back up some other thing I can do. Those are available. But majority of the customers, I'll tell you, you turn it on and they back up forever. That's the model they end up doing. The second thing is that we talked about, we back up the data, back up all of your data. And the key thing is that what Microsoft does is controls the API access in this case. So you have to be smart about how you do that. The key thing in Exchange and Outlook, I should say online email system here is the journaling. We capture every transaction in an email thing. Because of that, we make it extremely safe for the customer. So in case something goes wrong in the middle, you can still be able to recover. And for the company, it's the auditability. That's something we do. We can back up all of their data. That's an important aspect. Recovery options, as I mentioned, it's the speed of recovery. That's number one. Number two, from a granularity, we can do all the way from the entire set of users to just the one of the user, to just a mailbox or OneDrive, or could be just a file or folder. The key thing in all of those cases, we provide you searchability. We index all of the data and make it searchable. And we make sure that the right level of permissions are there. Only the people with the right level, because as soon as you index, they say, oh, so all of my data can be searched by everybody. No, don't worry about that. We make sure only the right people with the right credentials can actually search the data. That is something we do. The thing around, I told you about, the key thing here is that anytime you have people's data, in case, let's say a person leaves the company and things like that, you want to be able to get data back for them. In case, let's say, for example, a person goes on the company or there's a lawsuit, you want to be able to do a legal hold. You want to be able to do that. You want to make sure nobody can delete the data, things like that, right? You want to stop the thing. So those are things which we can actually do that. The other thing which happens is that because you're dealing with data, people want to know the auditing. They want to say, can you show me exactly who touched what, when, so on? Absolutely, all of that information is there for customers. We make it a lot more easier for them.
Hey, Sabaya, we've got a couple questions on RPO and RTO.
Sure, I can actually go through it. So where's your ransomware protection? Absolutely, ransomware protection. I'll definitely cover that. What's your RTO? Sorry, yeah, okay. There's an entire section on ransomware coming. Absolutely, we'll do that. And I'll tell you from a RTO thing here. The key thing is that we want to. Okay, so the beauty of our solution is that all a customer sets up is that by default, how long you have to recover, which is how often you want to back up, which is your recovery point objective. The thing is that what recovery time objective, you tell us like how long you have time to recover, because based on what you tell us how long you have time to recover, because every organization is different, right? And every application is different. You just specify what it is. And then our system automatically finds the right storage to match that requirement. That is something we do that. Those are things built into the solution. The way it actually sets up is that, for example, in the case of Outlook, let's say, for example, O365, by default, as you saw in the prior screen, sorry, like one thing I'll just bring up here. Journaling, for example, in email, we back up a journal, everything is backed up continuously. So that's email is continuous. Whereas with OneDrive, we back up once a day, and SharePoint, we back up thrice a day. People say, oh, what happens in the middle if it's there? The good thing is that it's a combination of HYCU plus the recycle bins available in the platforms. The reason we end up doing this is that we could actually do much more often. That's not a problem. Just that Microsoft controls the API. And as you know, if you start using a lot more, they'll throttle you. So you can't do much. So we got to go with what Microsoft allows here. In the other platforms, if you look at any other cloud, like our on-prem or our public cloud, we can go all the way from 15 minutes, every 15 minutes to however long the customer wants, from how often we want to back up. That's something we can do. And with regards to the recovery time, it depends on what it depends on your infrastructure. And one of the things which we tell people is we have what's called a fast restore option. When HYCU does the backup, sorry, I'm going a little off, but I think it's an important question. I want to answer that. When HYCU does backup, we do a regular backup like everybody else. Like you take a snapshot, back it up, and then copy the data to a backup target. But in addition to that, we are smart about actually leveraging the intelligence of the platform, meaning be it Google, Azure, AWS, or on-prem, all of them have snapshots. And the snapshots are extremely efficient and fast. So when a customer says, back it up, in addition to making a full backup, we also keep some number of snapshots. People say, why do you do that? What we have learned is that majority of the time when people want to recover data, it's for the data within the last 72 hours or the last 3 days, within the last 3 days. Most of the time, I recognize the mistake I made within 3 days, right? Because of that, in addition to backup, we also keep the snapshots. And when you want the data, we first go from the snapshots. So it's extremely fast. It's faster than even going to the backup target, which is still fast, but we can do it even better than that. So that is something, it's in minutes for customers to be able to do that particular, because we are using the native thing. We can even bring up entire databases because we can clone from the snapshot there. That is something we do for customers. I hope I made sense. I know I talked too much, but if there is anything, let me know. Yeah. So we talked about compliance. The same thing with regards to once you're dealing with customer data, the big part is around security. People always wonder like, oh, is it safe, secure, all that stuff. We keep it encrypted. We use the latest, we actually obviously SOC 2 compliant and a variety of other credentials we have gone through to actually make sure it's fully protected for customers. That is something there. And the key thing, the way we end up doing is that a lot of people back up the data and keep in Azure itself. It's like saying, you know, I backed up my data, I left it in my home. It's like, it's what happens if something goes wrong to the home, right? You don't want to do that. What we do is we back up the Azure O365 running on Azure onto AWS. That's where we keep it. Yeah, so that's that's our O365, a quick snapshot of what we did, why we did. There's one question there. Let me actually see. Okay, I learned about the fast version of the recovery. Yep, thank you. Other recovery methods? Yes, actually, we have a bunch of them. I will actually talk about in the follow-on. When I go to AWS too, I'll talk a lot more about very similar approach in a lot of them. I'm going to go there. Yeah. Thank you. So now I'm going to switch context here. So we talked about Kubernetes, our overall portfolio. We talked about Kubernetes. We talked about 365. I'm going to talk about AWS. As Simon mentioned earlier, we introduced AWS at AWS reInvent. It's currently in preview for our existing customers, as we are going through the whole process, and we will actually make it generally available to all customers in Q1. Right. The thing about our solution is that, I'll just quickly build it up. First thing is that it's a next generation solution. People say, what does it really mean? When we talk about solutions for public cloud, let's say AWS, there are lots of vendors there. First thing when you tell, they say, oh, so you have a backup solution for AWS. It's great. So you give me an AMI image and should I deploy it there? It's like, I said like, if I give you an AMI image and if you deploy, that's not a service anymore, right? You guys know that, because that's like deploying, it's like an on-prem world going onto the public cloud. We tell people, why are you doing that? Because when you go to cloud, you want a service. Turn on anything when you want. If you don't like, turn it off. That's the flexibility you want. You don't want it to do that. That's number one. Number two, when you think in terms of going to public cloud, or when, let's say, you decide to bring up applications on AWS or Azure or Google, you don't think like, oh, let me figure out the sizing exercise. Let me do some sizing. Can the public cloud hold it? No, that's not what you think, because you assume a cloud is supposed to elastically scale up and down. That's why you like it. Same thing with HYCU. I always tell people, if your vendor comes and tells you you got to do sizing, then it's not a service anymore, because a service truly has to elastically scale up and down. That's the model it's built on. That's why those are some of the reasons next generation, I'll tell you, that's part of there. It's cloud native. It's because one of the unusual things about HYCU compared to many other companies you guys will see is that when we decided to build for AWS, we had lots of on-prem technology, right? We could have leveraged, Goran's team could have taken any of them and then made it work on AWS. We didn't do that. Thanks to Simon, essentially, we decided to take a conscious approach of completely building ground up for AWS. Same thing we did for Azure and GCP. The reason we believe is that it has to be a native part of the platform. It is, again, not a bolt-on, it's built into the solution itself. That is something which we have. It's around the operational efficiency. We want to make it simple and usable for customers. And that's our core philosophy around simplicity. I'll talk about it. And the last thing around cross-cloud mobility, I'll talk a little more in detail in each one of them. We talk about it's there. It's a simple thing. We are available right in the AWS market. We'll be available right in the AWS market. Currently, it's in the private mode so that only people with the right credentials can see that. They can actually open it up, and you will actually see. Just go to the marketplace, search for HYCU, say subscribe, and that's it. It's done. Within 20 minutes, within about 15 minutes or so, you will get an email, or you can write in your console. You will say, here's a service provision for you. So it's a true service built in. And for every customer, we create a dedicated instance for every customer. We manage it, but it's a dedicated instance. People say, oh, so it's not a multi-tenant. No, it is multi-tenant. The way we have built it is that it's isolated instance. The reason we do that, people say, why is that important? We are dealing with customer data, and we want to make sure there is zero possibility of cross-contamination. In some other infrastructure, people say, oh, we keep everything together and segment it. It's there, but there is possibility of contamination. We don't want any of that stuff. So that's one of the reasons we have dedicatedly built it that way. We talked about no sizing, zero sizing infrastructure. Truly, I'll tell you, there are customers of ours. One of the early deployments was a customer with, I think, 7,000 virtual machines and applications running. And one of the guys, our sales guy, came and said, guys, can we really scale? Natural question for the sales guy, right? He came and said, are you sure we can do that? I said, not a problem. I said, why? The reason is that we are truly elastic. The customer, and they had 7 regions and 7,000 machines. we were able to do all of that because the reason is that the system truly scales to the right place they have and then do that. That's something there. Cost optimization, this is easy to say. The reason we are able to do that, I'll tell you, is because we have what I tell people, built-in cloud intelligence. People say, what does built-in cloud intelligence mean? In the cloud, as all of you guys know, it sounds easy, right? It's all one AWS. So I can spin up anywhere and back up anything. Sounds nice, but that's not true. People say, what do you mean it's not true? The reason it's not true is because, let's say I have an infrastructure running in Germany and I back up a data from the US. What the customer is going to do is pay an egress cost, all within AWS, but you're still going to pay an egress cost. People say, why? Because in AWS, as you know, anytime you move the data between regions, you're paying for an egress cost. Whereas HYCU is smart enough. It says, the data is in different regions. I need to do the right thing at the right place. It automatically spins up the right infrastructure in the right regions to do the backups. So the customer doesn't have to pay for the extra cost. That's the smarts we have built in the system. That's just one example. I can go on for many other examples, but that's the cloud intelligence. It's because we don't want customer to worry. We take care of it automatically built in there. That's the cloud intelligence built into the system there. And I'll go through because the key thing is that from a customer perspective, it's one console. They can manage their virtual machines, applications, and all the infrastructure on that particular one.
We have a question from Michael. I don't know if he's asking for the link to this information. Maybe Don, this is something that you can share if you have the link. I think Don is still on mute. Don is indeed still on mute.
Yeah. Don, if you could share some of the marketplace information, Don, any of our GCP or Azure marketplace for now.
Thank you very much.
I also have a question.
Sure, please.
Yeah, in the cloud service, your HYCU services, are you using the built-in Azure backup service? They have their own backup service, Azure and AWS and Google Cloud. So are you using this APIs or are you completely developing your own APIs together with a service cloud provider?
That's a great question, Christoph. The way we end up doing is that we leverage the native APIs. We don't use their backup APIs, but we use their snapshot APIs and their clone APIs and replica APIs, things like that. That's what we end up using. And we are fully integrated into the identity management. So we use the APIs, but a different set of APIs than their backup services. Okay. We do leverage their, for example, in Google, for example, we do leverage their SAP backend agent, which they have actually built in, and it's approved by SAP. We said, why reinvent the wheel when they have it? Because one of the philosophies which Simon got us to on early on was that to be 100% complementary to the platform, which is already there. And when they have built it, we will like to leverage it rather than trying to recreate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
That's something. Okay, so one of the questions from a GDPR perspective, using a US platform is difficult for storing personal data. That's a great question. So the beauty of our solution is that, I'll tell you, when we talked about even O365, a big thing for customers comes down to because of GDPR, especially you guys are German, many of you are German, so you guys are very conscious about that compared to many other people. We try to, the beauty of our solution is that we can try to make sure your data resides within certain geographies, assuming the cloud vendor supports it, just to be very clear there. As long as the cloud vendor has a region or a zone in that particular region, they can absolutely make sure the data resides within that particular one. So it doesn't leave that particular thing. And the thing is that people might say, okay, the data resides, but isn't your service running from the US and is it moving? That might be your concern. The good thing about us is that answer is no, because what happens is that if you are a German customer and you're running only within the German region or zone, we can actually make even the data movers, the things which actually migrate the data, touch the data, all of them are only within the German. We automatically spin it only within the German zone. That's the good thing about you. So you don't have to worry about, oh my God, is my data getting out of any of the countries? That's something we can do that. And that's one of the reasons I'll tell you, this is truly an important thing. When early on when we said, people said, one of our customers was in the US based customer was running in the US, but they said, oh guys, we're going to use something in Singapore and one in India. Can you guys actually, when will your services be up? I said, yeah, tomorrow. When is the cloud service available? The same day we are available. They said, how? The reason is that that's the cloud intelligence built in. We automatically understand the different regions that are available. We can spin it up in the right region where the data is for the customers. That's the intelligence built in. So day one, we can
maybe to jump in here, I think the question, we need to also emphasize that for the generic workloads, right, and containers and stuff, actually all of the data movement and data stays in the customer project, right? So actual data is not leaving the project itself, right? So what we have actually provisioned on our side is pretty much the management service, which is also configurable and provisionable within the preferred region or the region of the customer, right? So we believe with this approach, right, we actually completely address, all of these requirements. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Any questions, let us know. Yep. Cool. I'll just quickly go through some of the other ones. The way some of our beauty of our solution, I just want to actually quickly talk about, for example, the AWS case here. One of the interesting thing about us is that, let me start here where it talks of the HYCU DPaaS service. Our data protection service runs on AWS as an infrastructure on AWS. When a customer subscribes and starts using our service, one of the initial confusing part for some people is that in a traditional backup, they go and create an administrator, set up the passwords, and all this stuff. In HYCU, there's nothing like that. They get confused. What do you mean there's no HYCU specific user? I said, yes, there's no user. It's exactly same users you use on AWS, because we use the AWS's identity access management. And so customer logs in with their native AWS thing. Do we maintain passwords? No, we don't maintain passwords. All we get to use your credentials, what you approve, and we use that. Because we use the customer's credentials, customer's identity here, everything we do is completely logged on the platform. The customer from a security and safety perspective can be assured if they are happy with AWS, Google, Azure, you should be happy with HYCU because we are using the same native securities which they actually offer. And everything HYCU does is fully logged, and that's one of the reasons for customer safety. Again, because especially in the public cloud, people are worried about who's touching my data, what happens. Not a problem, it's there. Again, it's a service, and we can support pretty much all of your regions worldwide where the platform vendor supports, and we can support all of your infrastructure across the board. It is not just, so that's there. In addition, if you have on-prem infrastructure, we can help you back up to AWS S3, and we can also help you migrate from on-prem onto the public cloud. That's the way it's fully built in, and it's extremely simple to use. I'll quickly walk through some of the stuff here. With regards to the cloud efficiency, people talk about cloud native. Some of the benefits here, we use their native AWS S3 snapshots. And when we copy the data, a big part in cloud is that it's nice that you can use the S3 buckets, it's cheap, but you want to keep your costs low, because in the cloud, otherwise the cost will exponentially grow. The way we end up storing the data is that we have what we call a cloud dedupe. This is a differentiator between us and many other players in the market. A lot of other people say, oh, we have a dedupe application engine built into the platform. Sounds nice. Double click on it. The way they will end up doing it, they took their on-prem dedupe appliance, made it run on the public cloud. Sounds nice, right? The big difference people have to realize, customers have to probably not realize, see, is that in the public cloud, storage is cheap, but compute and memory are expensive. If you run a dedupe appliance, it requires lots of memory and lots of compute. So you're trading off one for the other. And for dedupe appliances, have to run 24/7 for you to access the data. That's one of the reasons HYCU consciously, we at HYCU decided to not do that. And we said, let's actually deduplicate the blocks before we write it. And we make sure that only a single instance of the block is there in the backup targets at any point in time. That is something intelligence we have actually built in. The good thing here is that all you're paying for is storage. There's no extra compute or memory used. So it's a significant cost saving for customers. That's it. And as Goran said earlier, all of the data is in the customer's hand. That's something protected. So recovery-wise, we can actually provide you at any level of recovery. You can bring up all of your machines and applications. You can recover just the single file or folder, any level of granularity you choose in the middle. The way we do our backup, the reason we call it no performance penalty is that people in general worry about backups because there is either an agent or there is a impact on the production system. The way HYCU does is it completely impact-free. People say, how do you do that? The way we end up doing, many of you are technical here, I'll just walk through. The way we end up doing it is that we take a snapshot and then spin it up. And then what we let the application go. We take an application, make application consistent thing, take a snapshot and let the virtual machine go. When that actually happens, the application does not even know what was going on. And now we take the copy, which is in a snapshot, and then do the backup. And it's done completely off of the production system. So that's why there's no performance penalty in the system. And there was a question around ransomware. I'll probably tell you the way we worry about this thing all the time as a company, because we don't want our customers to get impacted. The way we end up doing it is that first, we take a copy and keep it in a project which is not accessible by the production system. That's number one. That's the first part. The second part is that in addition, we also try to use the worm functionality built in each of the platforms. That's a second thing. So those are two simple things. I can talk a lot more about what are the other networking things we do too. But those are two things which we try to keep a separation for protection against ransomware for customers. Yeah. And operational efficiency, this is something we talk about. It's around, as I said earlier, it's all completely API driven. As a customer who wants to automate it, they can do that. It's multi-tenant and self-service ready. So you don't have to have a big team managing it, especially in a cloud. People hate that because they want to reduce operational cost. That's absolutely something you can do with HYCU. And you don't need to do any training because when the user uses it, it's all presented in the things which they know and use. And so that's some of the things which I want to just talk to people. And the big thing here also is that for customers, because it's a service, we monitor the service 24/7, right? And when we find a problem, we automatically fix it for the customer, or we tell them, hey, let's say we cannot fix it. We have to tell you there is a thing, can you please fix it? And that's something we do. That's a proactive support we end up doing for the customers. That's part of it. Cross-cloud mobility. So far, we talked about the protection of the data on AWS, right? But there are two things here for customers. As we said, a lot of times they want to be able to make copies within AWS. They want to make copies of their applications for testing and development purpose. That is something you could use HYCU, and you could do it in the same region or do a different region. That's something we provide. And especially this is very useful. I'll tell you, one of our customers during COVID, pre-COVID, like this is the same use case applicable here, so I'll mention it. They are a customer with thousands of developers and they do lots of development. What happens is to keep their costs low on the public cloud, on Friday nights, they turn off all the machines. And then on Monday morning, they spin up all of them back. Sounds like a logical thing to do, right? But what happened was, in Monday morning, when they were trying to bring it back up, they realized that during COVID, when people suddenly started going early on during the early part of COVID, the cloud vendor was running out of capacity in that region. So they had to spin up the data on a different region. That is something they used HYCU for. So predominantly they try to bring it up. If there's a problem, they will use HYCU to bring it up on a different region. So it's same disaster recovery functionality, but in a very different context they've been able to do. That's something there. And we talk about, again, from on-prem, we can actually help you protect, as well as we can give you an option to DR from DR your on-prem workloads onto AWS. That is something we do for customers. And all of this, again, there's no agents or anything to deploy for customers. Any questions? Something there? I'll just as a quick summary of what are some of the things which we do are different about us. I really wish it was all in person because I don't, sometimes it's a little hard to do it on Zoom to see whether I'm making sense or not for you guys.
Tobiah, I was
yeah.
just going to let everyone know that we will be sending out this copy of the presentation, so you will see all of the details there. Please do jump in if you've got any questions. And yes, we're going to keep going until 1:15, so you do have time if you want to have more questions then, or keep chatting. And I have a question here, which is, what is the average size of your current clients?
It's a great question. So we actually see a very wide range. With 3,000 customers, we've got everyone from Fortune 50 customers like Broadcom to upper mid-market, lower enterprise, as well as a very large implementation or set of implementations in the public sector. So think about the US federal government, think about European governments, as well as what we call SLED, which would be your local governments, education, et cetera. So again, it's a very wide range in terms of size and scale of the businesses that we support. And we support them in a lot of different ways. We have customers who are uniformly all HYCU, leveraging HYCU Protege across all clouds. We have customers who are leveraging HYCU just for public cloud. And I think one of the things that we've found more and more is that as customers sort of start to experience the simplicity of HYCU in one particular area of the market, it very, very quickly expands. The average customer for HYCU is now a repeat acquirer of the services, purchasing up to 3 times in any given year. So, I think that it speaks volumes about, not only our 90 NPS score, but also the fact that, the customers who are experiencing the simplicity of HYCU in one area of their data estate are, experiencing it then in other areas as well, and continuing to grow those relationships.
Got it. Cool. Thank you, Simon. Just to add to what you said, Simon, I just want to give you one example too. I mean, there are customers, for example, in some of the public clouds, when they start, they have like about 15 virtual machines. That's all they back up. And there are customers who have thousands of virtual machines they do day to day on a constant basis. That's the scale. The main reason is that this goes back to our elasticity we talk about. It's a completely elastic solution and you can scale at any level. And that's something which we see customers. And the ransomware protection at AWS 3, yes. Okay, so very cool. I'll just quickly go through, this is AWS, and I think this is something which, just a quick snapshot of, as Lisa said, we will actually send you this information out to you guys. The key thing is that we provide you the 3Ds, data migration, data protection, disaster recovery. And why is it different? Here are some samples of capable technologies we leverage and what's special about us.
One more question about
Sure.
disaster recovery. With the scenario from on-prem to the cloud, let's say AWS, how do you handle all the IP and network changes? So normally you have your private IP networks in your on-prem scenario. Do you have special assistance or something like VMware site recovery solution for this?
That's a great question, Christoph. So essentially what we end up doing for us, what we currently focus on is bringing up HYCU, and we can actually change the networking as part of our recovery itself. We can actually do the networking for the virtual machine and the applications which we manage. But there are things outside of our thing, which is definitely there, like some of the things which customers have to do, pre-configure there, for example, DNS and things like that. They have to do that. Absolutely, they have to do that particular one. There, what we end up seeing, Christoph, majority of our customers we do is, as you know, Terraform is so popular and that's what people end up doing. So that's the thing, we integrate our workflows into there. That's number one. Number two, we also have for customers what we call bulk recovery mechanisms for, especially in the case of a DR. That's a workflow thing we have completely built in for customers. They can actually leverage that too.
Okay, thank you.
But maybe, Sabaya, just to add on top of it, I think our focus is to make sure that you can bring up and run the system in the cloud from on-prem, which includes all of the required changes from specific networking or sizing even parameters because sometimes, the size, the CPU or the setup of the machine cannot be exactly the same as it is on-prem, right? So all of these aspects are completely automatically covered by HYCU in order to simplify the whole, if you want, process of recovery. And as well, then the specific things, if required, right, to be done by the customer, will be done on top of it, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Very cool. Thank you. So there's one more thing I want to talk about before doing a quick demo, and this is around R-score. So Simon, do you want to do a quick thing around R-score, Simon, before we go into like what drove us to do R-score?
Yeah, look, I think as data protection vendors and as vendors that are sort of on the forefront of so many cyber attacks, one of the things that occurred to, myself and Goran and Sabaya was that there was almost a moral imperative to try to put a company like HYCU in between the marketplace and the bad actors who are perpetrating all of this criminal activity. In recent studies, it's been found that ransomware as a service, has become as cheap as $200, which has enabled so many thousands of folks to start to, enter this world of criminality. And of course, that's given rise to, attacks that are now occurring once every 11 seconds, with the average company being down upwards of 16 days after trying to recover. And so we thought, beyond just commercial success, beyond just growing our business, what can HYCU actually do to support the overall market at large? And what we decided to do was actually offer a free public service globally, which we entitled R-Score, or Resiliency Score. And R-Score is effectively a credit score that we assign to a company based on a series of information and questions that they fill out and answer, all of which are related to their ability to recover from a ransomware attack. So the questions go through, networking, security, process, et cetera. And at the end, in a completely anonymous fashion, the participant is given a customized report with not only their score on a scale of 0 to 1,000, indicating how well prepared they are to recover from a ransomware attack, but also a series of key indicators, almost a recipe that they can take back to their organization and implement changes to make them more resilient and more able to recover in the event of an attack. I think at this point we all agree that it's when. It is not if. It's not if, it's when we think about ransomware attacks. And I think that the R-Score model that we've built, and which is available for free of charge at getarscore.org, is actually one of the simplest and most achievable sites that companies can set when they're looking to ensure that they are setting themselves up for success in the event of one of these tragedies. It's been tremendously successful. We've reached out to a number of folks and had an amazing sort of set of inbound interest from other vendors. So we actually partnered with Kevin Mandian from Mandian FireEye. We partnered with SADA. We partnered with Rackspace. We partnered with Carasoft, a series of very, very well-known businesses, all of who said, this is a common problem. This is not just a HYCU problem. This is a worldwide problem. And so we've sort of banded together to present R-Score to the marketplace. And again, we've had thousands of organizations around the world who have logged in and gone to the site, taken the test, and increased their ability to be resilient and recover from these attacks. So Sabaya, take it away.
Before you carry on, Sabaya, I'd like to run one of your polls, if that's okay.
Sure, please.
So the answer has been already given. How often do ransomware attacks happen? And yes, you were all paying attention. It's every 11 seconds. And this is up from 40 seconds in 2018.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, thank you everybody for paying attention this late in the day in Europe. We do appreciate it. I do see a question here. HYCU is known for its integration with Nutanix. What is the status of this collaboration? I think the great thing about the model that we've built here with HYCU Protege and these purpose-built backup and recovery services is that one integration does not negate the other. So we've continued to invest in the Nutanix relationship. We've continued to invest in our Nutanix purpose-built backup as a service within the context of HYCU Protege, just as we're investing in AWS and GCP and Azure and VMware, et cetera. What we're finding is that more and more customers are moving to public cloud, and that's certainly the fastest growing area of our business. But we retain the title of the deepest, tightest, and broadest integration when it comes to data protection for Nutanix. So it's absolutely an exceptional relationship. We continue to feel very bullish on Nutanix as a business. We love what they're doing as a company, and we will continue to invest in that aspect of HYCU Protege, but in the context of an overall multi-cloud strategy.
So sorry to interrupt just again, Subhaya. We do have a question that I think will be better answered after the demo, as we've already started to talk about ransomware. And I'm giving you the heads up, Simon, it is in chat, so you can prepare an answer. I would presume that HYCU is hardly known in Germany. How do you plan to change that? What are your goals for the German market?
I think it's a very fair question, and I'm happy to answer it quickly now. I think one of the exciting things about running a hyperscaling startup, a company that's grown, leaps and bounds from 0 to 3,000 customers in just a couple of years, is exactly these kinds of challenges. I think our why as a business is to help keep everybody safe. And I think, our ability to ensure that all of the folks in the marketplace in Germany receive access and information related to HYCU so that they can include HYCU in their resiliency discussions and resiliency purchasing decisions. This is an incredibly valuable and important thing for us. And I think certainly, this meetings like this, discussions with incredibly reputable journalists and analysts like yourselves, goes a long way in helping us to build that. I think the other areas, though, are investment. So I think one of the things you'll see out of HYCU in 2022 is going to be, large investments in Germany from both a personnel perspective as well as from a marketing perspective. And I think it's absolutely correct to say that the awareness investments we've been making have not necessarily been focused on Germany in the past, and I think you'll see that in the future. And by attending Technology Live again, I can't agree more with Fred.
Thank you very much.
I was not going to say that, Simon. I wasn't going to say if you.
Well, I think it's fair. I think this is a terrific discussion. But Subhaya, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you very much. Cool. For folks, as Simon said, one of the things is that it's currently a service. RScore is a service. It's called getarscore.org. Getarscore.org is the thing. If you want to check it out, you can actually check it out too. So Simon, true to his thing he was talking about, when we decided to build this thing, we wanted to make it a public service. There is nothing about the customers. We don't keep any customer data in this particular one. It's there. It is truly a service which is there for customers. The whole idea, I just want to again emphasize the point which Simon was saying. In the world of ransomware, as you guys know, there is a prevention, detection, and recovery, right? Prevention, as a backup vendor, as a customer data protection vendor, we can help with a little bit of prevention, but that prevention is not our primary thing. I'll just be completely. There are a lot, that's all predominantly around security, and there are lots of things customers have to do there. Detection, yes, we do things around detection, but our majority of the effort as a data protection vendor, we are an insurance policy, and we are there to help customer recover the data for the customer. So our entire focus is around recovery. One of the challenges which we solve for a lot of customers, as Simon was saying, is that people, the way it happened was a lot of them, when, let's say one of the CEOs, when you guys, I don't know how many of you remember, in the US, one of the big pipeline companies, oil pipeline companies called Colonial Pipeline, got impacted. And the entire East Coast of the United States shut down from an oil shortage for 3 days or 4 days, or something like that. When that happened, the day it happened, we got lots of calls from customers in the oil and natural gas industry. The reason they were worried about was, hey, am I safe? That was the question. And if something like this happened, can I recover? That's the problem people actually had. The thing is that's what triggered, that's one of the things which we said, like, how could we help customers say how safe they are in recovery, from a recovery? That's what our whole idea with Get Our Score is, the recoverability of their infrastructure in case of ransomware. That's what we are focused on here, right? It's not the prevention. Prevention, there are lots of scores available. It's around the recoverability. That's why it's called the recoverability index for customers. So it's our score. This is something you guys are, as Simon said, these are some of the people who have been involved. We led the thing, and we have actually gotten information from, our engagement with people from Boston College researchers, Mandiant, FireEye Mandiant, you guys are probably very familiar, and so on. There are 3 parts. Again, I just want to focus on the recovery part to it. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through. Today, the way it actually happens is that people, lots of companies, the way it actually happens, people just assume they'll recover because they're backing up. That's the way they do. The second thing is majority of the people have a checklist and they say, oh, I looked at the checklist, everything is good, I'm good. The third thing is there are best practice guides. These are classic things which people actually have. We also have best practice guides. So in some sense, it's not. That's something we can tell a customer. It's like saying, I know how to exercise, but have you exercised? Do you know use your body from? That's the problem, right? It's people don't know, will it actually recover from certain things? That's where we wanted to help customers with. And that's what we built the getarscore.org. It's completely there. We actually ask customers in 5 areas. These are the 5 areas we ask questions. Obviously, there are lots of questions. In the interest of time, I'm just going to give you the top level ones. The top 3, first is we wanted to make sure customers have a good process for recovery, because process for backing up the data, because you can have the best infrastructure, but if you don't follow a good process, it's no point after that, right? So you got to have a process. The second thing is that, do you have the right infrastructure in place, right? Once you have the right infrastructure, process and infrastructure, now the question is, are you guarding your data properly? Do you keeping it secure and networking? That's a security aspect of it. So now your data is safe. Now the question is recoverability. We break down recoverability into 2 parts. One is recoverable within the data center, and the second, recovery from a DR, from on a disaster recovery site. The big thing I want to explicitly call out here, the DR for ransomware is different than a DR from a regular disaster recovery. The reason I say that is, as you well know, when you want to recover from ransomware, you don't want to immediately take the latest copy and spin up, because in a normal disaster, you want to get the latest copy and get it up and running. In the case of DR, you don't want the latest copy because the latest copy is infected. You want to go to the right copy and bring it back up. That's where we can help you. So those are things we help customers to think through. We ask them to think through that particular one. Those are the 5 areas, and you get that. And oops, sorry. As I get to Simon's thing here, in the United States, we have something called HYCU score. It's the credit score. I'm sure in Germany, I should have actually checked before. I'm assuming in Germany, do you guys have a credit scoring system similar to this? I'm assuming you probably do. Some mechanism of where people actually check the credit score. Same thing here. We try to make it between 0 and 1,000. And there are lots of factors. We have 2 flavors which are there. One is a web version, which is there for a quick thing where a customer, including you guys, can actually go and check it out. And that's about 23 or questions to give you a score. But the better thing we would recommend customers to do is go through a in-depth version, and which we call a in-depth consulting version. Either HYCU can help you do that particular one. Again, it's free of charge. HYCU can help you do that. Or we have partners who can actually do that particular one for customers. That's something we end up doing. The key thing here is that it's not a one-time set and forget, because ransomware constantly evolves and we have to evolve along with that. It's a continuous thing. We have an entire team dedicated to it right now to constantly keep making our model better. That's something we do. So that's a quick thing so far. Any questions before I switch to a demo?
Yeah, one question about detection of anomalies for file accesses and so on. Do you have built-in tools that continually analyze all the traffic that's going from production to the backup devices?
That's a great question, Kirsten. Yes, we do actually do that. I mean, one of the things we do is that we can actually send, one of the things we monitor for, as you said, anomalies in customers. That's from a ransomware detection perspective. We do that. and we can tell customers saying, hey, something is off here. That's something we end up doing it as part of our solution today. That's something we have to. Yeah.
And also on top of it, a couple of other things that we observe on the backup environment, right? The usual, as Sabaya mentioned, is anomalies in the incrementals or changes that are happening on the source. And also sometimes if the APIs allow, we also check the configuration of the targets, if they're protected, open, right, properly secured, and these kind of events are then passed alerts to the customer, right?
Thank you.
So there's a question, I think, Michael, I think you picked up in one of the comparing, so trust focus customer portal. You did ask, it's a fair question to ask, and I'll actually give you on recovery verification. So one of the challenges with some of these public sites, right, Michael, as you clearly know, is that they are point in time when the customer actually originally did that and which version of the software they actually did that. So at some point, we didn't actually have recovery verification built into the system. The customer had to do it manually. The good thing is that in our current versions of the software, we absolutely have recovery verification built in. And the interesting thing is that we have gone one step above many of the other guys. And majority of the verification people do, for example, backup verification, they spin up the machine, up and running, good, or they do a ping test, it's done. What we have done is gone one step further and say, just ping is yes, that's all you want to do, Mr. Customer. Answer is yes, we have it. But in addition to that, we also can test you can add application specific logic inside the thing. So it's just not about the machine up, it's also the application up. That is something which we have actually done. That's there. The second thing I'll tell you, one of the things you'd ask about live recovery. It's an interesting debate we actually have internally. We don't name our thing like a live recovery, but the big part of the live recovery was originally done when platforms were not smart as much. The challenge with this live recovery, it's a great buzz tool, which a lot of the other vendors, I don't want to name names, but a lot of other people actually call it out. Live recovery, they call it rapid restore. They have all sorts of other names. The challenge is that it's like the analogy I end up using is it's almost like in the cars, you have a spare tire, right? When you have a problem, you can use the spare tire to go some distance, but you cannot go from city to city because spare tires are used to be only used for 25 miles or 50 miles maximum, right? And you can't go fast. You're supposed to go at half the speed. When you're running a production environment, you want to go at full speed. You don't want to say, oh, because I'm in recovery mode, I'm going to run half speed. And with live recovery, you can do for 1 or 2 machines. You can't do it at scale. Even though vendors like to market it quite a bit. The way we end up doing, we believe, is we leverage the smart in the platform, like the one I was talking about, fast restore. What we believe for customers is that when you want to recover, you should be able to recover and run at 100% speed. Don't say, oh, because it's in recovery, run at 50%. That's one of the reasons we leverage the smarts in the platforms like quick creations of virtual machines, applications, containers from the snapshots or clones in the infrastructure. That's done extremely fast and it's much better. Those are some things there, but I said, I'm sure people probably, not everybody's aware. I can actually go through a lot more. So that's something. Thank you. Cool. So that's a quick rundown. I'm going to actually switch to a demo. You had to bear with me for a minute. I hope my demo guards work. This is I got to switch to a screen. Say that's something there. I hope my demo guards work. Gordon, just in case my networking has some issues, I hope you have something to online live to, just in case. Yeah.
Sure, I'm your backup, Sabaya.
Thank you. Can you guys see the screen right now? I'm assuming you can. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So the first thing which we tell customers is that the first thing you want to be able to see is most of the customers are actually multi-cloud, right? At a minimum, they have on-prem plus at least one cloud. In majority of the cases, they have multiple clouds. In this case, they actually, I'm logged into our HYCU Protege console. You can actually see, as you can see, it's a quick synthesized view across all your cloud infrastructure. your different machines, you actually have applications, controllers, and so on. A conscious thing which we did compared to many other people, I'll tell you, is that we focus on what the customer cares about. What the customer's management cares about is the virtual machines, applications, and shares. Those are the things which they care about, right? And you can actually move around, things like that. So, but the point is that all they care about is that are things protected? That's what the management cares about. And then what the administrators care about are, hey, are the policies compliant? Is there enough capacity in the targets? Things like that. But that's the thing. But the predominant focus is not on the speeds and feeds, because if you look at a lot of other people, they'll tell you, oh, how many jobs, retention, things like that. It's like, guys, all that is, but what's important for the team? This is a dashboard. That's what we give you. So we give you a quick snapshot of that, right? It gives you a snapshot of what's protected, not protected. This is across all of your controllers. And the thing is that, let's say, for example, in this customer, in this demo example, the thing is they have a bunch of Azure instances, they have on-prem instances, they have O365 and so on. I don't think we have turned on the AWS in this particular case. Yeah. So GCP instance and so on. They have a variety of, including O365 across the board there. And now you can see at every independent cloud, how is your status? You can actually do that. I can click onto any one of them and go to the management of that particular console. I can actually do that one too right now. So if I were to do, for example, click on it, and I can log into one of my Google console. While I log into the Google thing, let me actually do one of the things. I hope my system is up and running. Okay, let me actually log into the Google. The same thing I could do for AWS too. It's, the functionality wise would be the similar thing. I'll actually do the thing. So let me actually log in. A key thing you will see when I'm logging in, I will log in with my own login. I'm not logging in with any specific HYCU specific login. It'll be the one active. This is an integrated into the identity management of Google. And that's what this is actually doing here. Yep. And let me actually make my screen bigger. 1 second, it's coming back up. Yeah. So a key thing is that, you know, our solution itself is very simple. This is this thing screen. You probably see, why am I showing this thing? This is a startup screen, which is there all the time. Because when people log in, they think it's complicated. It's actually a very small set of things. As you can see, there are only 4 steps for the customer, and then just back it up. And so it is truly, as soon as you log in to your Google, Azure, AWS, whichever cloud it is, we discover what's running in the infrastructure. And this is built in, right? So once you do that particular one, you should be able to automatically choose, for example, if I want to see, let me start with all the application instances. I can see all of the instances which I'm managing. And you can actually choose it by the different projects. You can actually choose, for example, I could have different projects within the infrastructure. In this case, I'm an administrator. I have the full privileges. I'm doing that. But you can actually choose, you can actually have different billing accounts, different infrastructure, and you can just manage just what you need. That is something we actually have for customers, right? It's something there. Backing up in HYCU, on-prem, public cloud, it doesn't matter. Backups have to be simple for us. All you do is select a particular machine and then say what policy you want to apply. And in this case, again, our system comes with a pre-packaged set of policies. You can create new policies, extremely simple. But backup itself, all I select what I want to say, assign, and I'm done with the backup. People say, what do you mean you're done with the backup? Where do you set up the jobs, the targets, the retention, all that stuff, something there. All that is completely automated using our policies. It's that simple. It's one-time setup. Even though I did a manual backup here, in reality, most customers don't do manual backups, as you could imagine. It's completely automated because our entire philosophy for customers is try to set and forget. Do one-time setup, don't do this manual stuff, because manual stuff leads to errors. That's something there. So I'll show you the policies and how we make it completely automated. This is with regards to backing up a virtual machine. But backing up an application, it's exactly the same thing. You can select a particular machine, apply the policy, select it and say apply, and that's it. It's exactly the same thing. For example, you can see there are some SAP instances running here, right? Even backing up an SAP, which is generally considered complex, our system automatically discovers an SAP. Once it's there, the customer doesn't have to do anything new, right? we discovered the virtual machines, and we will discover your applications inside the virtual machine. This is a patent we have, and that's what we call automated application awareness. We discover the applications running inside it. So once we discover it, and when a customer says, apply a backup, I says, okay, now I want to assign the backup, and I do that. As soon as they assign, what HYCU does is says, because it knows it's an SAP, HYCU says, it needs backend. So what HYCU would do is that, just in this case, this is the only case where we use an agent because that's the only way SAP allows you to do. All other cases we don't. As soon as we discover it's an SAP, we find the latest SAP backend agent, we deploy it inside the customer's infrastructure for the customer, and then we manage it from that point on. And every time we back up, we try to make sure the latest infrastructure is available. That's completely automated. The customer does not have to do anything. So that's the level of things. So it's built in, packaged, and the customer didn't have to do anything. Again, the customer just said, oh, back it up one time and it's done. Behind the scene, it does all the automation. It sets up the right thing, configuration, all that stuff, completely done for the customer. That's the simplicity of what HYCU does here, right? That's there for the customer.
And Sabaya, just to jump in, I think what also is visible here is our applications are first-class citizens, right? So potentially we can mix them and assign to a same policy, which is the only result if you have a fully integrated, how to say, approach to the platform and application first kind of logic, right? So imagine single policy to manage Kubernetes applications, as you can see in the table, SAP HANA or virtual machines, right? So that means regardless of the source, you can address the new generation of the modern applications, right? So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gordon. Absolutely. So I think that's Gordon brings up a great point. So if you remember, when I went to the Kubernetes session, I told you that we don't show you the containers. For example, if you look at the instances here, there are lots of containers running. There are lots of, you can see all these GKE, all these are containers, but that doesn't matter because that's why we said exclude. Don't even worry about those containers. What you really care about is the application running inside the container. And these are things HYCU automatically discovers. Again, the customer does not have to do anything special. Once we discover the Kubernetes clusters, we discover what applications are running inside them. That's, again, makes customers' life simple. They just care about the applications and databases. They should not have to care about where it's running. Again, selecting backing up, it's exactly the same thing as Gordon was saying. It's the same level of, we treat them as a first-class citizen there. That's something. Yeah. So backing up is just one click across the board, and we take care of automatic right configuration management behind the scene. So the thing, when I talk about this thing, people a lot of times thinking, oh yeah, it all sounds nice, but your policies are probably complicated, right? In reality, the policies are extremely simple. I'll just probably show you one of the things. Let me show you one of the existing policies. This is all a policies like a single screen, and that's all I just tell them. It's only one single thing they got to fill. It's just policy. Just tell us how often you want to back up, how long you want to maintain, right? And we give the customer a choice. Do you want to keep snapshots or do you want to use targets? That's the first copy, right? Because especially in the public cloud, a lot of people are very comfortable using snapshots as the first tier of backup. We always recommend 3-2-1. You guys know the 3-2-1 philosophy, but the thing is the first copy can be a snapshot. And when you select a target, HYCU can automatically manage all of the targets. We automatically do all that stuff for you. Don't worry about it. But you can always tell us, no, I want you to go here. That's fine. We'll do that. But by default, HYCU automatically creates the right target. And we automatically choose the right, because let's say, for example, in the cloud, as you guys know, there are lots of different storage tiers, right? They call it standard object storage. There is a nearline, cold line, archive. They have all sorts of flavors. And there are different costs associated. You remember I mentioned to you about the cloud intelligence built in? That's one of the things, the beauty about HYCU. If you tell us saying, hey, this data has to be there for 7 years, we can say, then it's better to be in the archive tier. We will automatically create the right storage in the archive tier and put the data in the archive tier. That's the smarts we automatically can do for you, right? That is something that's, you might say, so what's special about it? Because it saves you a tremendous amount of money. And a lot of times people forget it. They, you know what, I could have put it there, and it becomes expensive at that particular point in time. The automatically selected for the customer. That's an example there. The other thing I'll tell you is that which we have what's called labels. This allows customers to labels or tags, depending on some people call it, especially in public clouds, AWS, Google, Azure, any of that stuff. People use labels and tags all the time. You can actually say, okay, so if it's a production thing, a key type, let's say it's a type, and it says, if it says production, means I got to apply backup every 4 hours, right? Anything which says comes up with a key value pair of production, then automatically we will actually back it up using this policy. That's one of the ways we do set and forget, right? It automatically allows you to do that. And you can actually we do support your copies and archives, all that is built in. Everything, just again, one simple thing, logically set it up. When I showed you the label, some people say, yeah, that's all nice, but what happens if the administrator forgot to set it up? Not a problem. We have the defaults. That's a catch-all. By default, we can keep your data safe. Those are just examples of what we do for the policy, right? That's just the backup aspect of it and the policy aspect. People then say, that's all nice. All I care about is the recovery, right? Recovery is probably the most important thing. I'll show you a recovery of a containerized database application, right? Let's say, for example, you have this thing and something goes wrong and one of your admins says, like, oh my God, this PostgreSQL thing which I was running in a container and messed it up, can I get something back, right? In that case, essentially what you can do is that you select the particular thing, they can log in themselves and do that. When they log in, they will only see what they manage because, again, we are integrated natively into the platform. And they can choose any one of them and then say restore. They can restore the entire application. In majority of the cases, they don't want to recover the entire application. They want to recover just as you can actually see your entire application. Again, when do you end up doing recovery of your entire application? It's typically you have multiple clusters and you want to be able to recover not in the same cluster. I want to test it. I want to do a testing. So you can actually bring up in a different cluster and test it out. You can recover to a different namespace. If you guys are familiar with the container world, you know that there are different methodologies available. We can actually do that. That's, again, something built in. The second thing is around storage. What a customer can do, especially in container world, is that when they have persistent data, they don't want to change everything. They just want to replace one of their physical PVCs, as they call it, and they want to replace one of them. You can actually do that. You can, again, in this case, there is only one. If they had multiple, I can choose which one I want to recover, and just to recover that alone, you can do that. The other thing is around recovery of objects. This is a more complicated thing. Again, one of the things, oh, sorry, I think I had this one there. I don't know what I did. The key thing here is that a single container, a single Kubernetes cluster, for example, on an average, has at least 20 different configuration files, right? People say, oh, is there a problem? The beauty of the Kubernetes thing is it's so easy to change and make changes and try it out. That's great. The problem is also so easy to change. So people change it all the time. So if you make a mess in one of them, you don't know where you made a mess and you're still trying to figure out what happened because there are 20 plus configuration files on an average. The good thing about HYCU is that people, every time we back up, we not only back up the data, this one, we also back up all your configuration. You can choose any one point in time and be able to recover. That is something we can do there. So that's just a quick snapshot of that. And the same thing, yeah.
Yes, but I was going to say we're probably coming up to a hard stop. So if you want to wrap quickly, but then obviously any remaining questions, we'd love to close either live or if anybody has questions after reviewing notes or the replay, certainly feel free to follow up directly. We'd be, happy to jump on a call or certainly address any questions live.
Sorry, Don, I get too excited about when you show the demos of solutions. I get about our solutions, right? So this is the quick thing here is that I'll just mention one other thing I'll mention there. So we talked about the backup and the recovery, the dashboards. The key thing is the reporting is a big part of backup world. One of the beauty of HYCU compared to many other solutions and a lot of other solutions, you buy the base backup product, you got to buy a reporting software, you got to run SQL Server, run all that. It's a pain. I mean, just to be simply put it, that it's such a lot of pain for customers. That's one of the things we wanted to truly make it simple for customers. That's one of the reasons reporting is built natively into HYCU's, all of our solutions, right? it's native part of our solution. You don't need a separate infrastructure. You don't need any extra licenses. It's all built in part of the native. That's something which is there. Again, the beauty is that it's actually built in. You can create your own set of the infrastructure if that's what you want to do. And if you want us to create any additional ones, you can create it yourself. And or you can actually tell us, and we can actually help you create one too. That's simple.
Quick question here on the commercial terms.
Yep.
So Michael, really simply, this is consumption based. I mean, this is all through the marketplace. So you can literally, based on the amount of data that's actually going through the system, that's exactly how we charge.
Yep, absolutely. There's something there. And if you guys want to check it out, go to Google Marketplace and you will see right in the Google console, you'll be able to see that. And yes, we do offer pay as you go, and we do actually offer customer commits if they want to. Absolutely there. And one of the things I always tell people is that everything we do here is available as an API. For example, this last thing I'll just mention here, we don't just talk about it, it's there. It's something available as a REST API Explorer. Everything is available for customers. Everything is fully documented, and they can try it out themselves before they actually come to us. Yeah. So that's a quick rundown. I know I talked a lot. I hope I made sense.